Ben was not doing very well at school. He was only 11 years old and found it hard to understand what the teacher was teaching. When the teacher announced the results for the first test, it was not good news for Ben. Unfortunately, he had done very poorly and the other students in the class laughed at him. This made Ben feel very sad and embarrassed. On top of everything, Ben had a very short temper. Once, the cockiest of his classmates kept picking on him in the hallway. He couldn't take it anymore and broke down. He hit the guy in the face with his locker. The principal called Sonia, Ben's mother, and said that the other kid had to get 5 stitches because of Ben's actions. The principal added that Ben's grades were very bad and that it was unlikely that he would even be able to finish school. Mom got very upset for her son and told Ben that with such grades, he might end up scrubbing floors in the factory like her. Sonia made a decision to support her son's learning and discovered that Ben's eyesight had become much weaker in the last year. She went out and purchased glasses to help him see better. Additionally, she noticed that Ben had difficulty imagining things, so she took some time to teach him how to be more creative. She provided him with some exercises and activities to do that would help him to improve his imaginative skills. Sonia's efforts soon began paying off, and Ben's grades began to improve. At the time, Sonia was suffering from severe depression. One Sunday, she told Ben and his older brother Curtis to go to church service without her. During the priest's inspiring sermon, for the first time in his life, Ben imagined himself in the role of a doctor. After church, they quickly hurried back home. Ben happily told his mother that he finally got his imagination working and he dreamed of becoming a doctor. Mom replied with a smile that her son could become anyone. All it takes is imagination and a strong wish, Mom said. Sonia was feeling increasingly sad and hopeless, and her condition was getting worse over time. She felt like a dark cloud was hanging over her and was slowly taking over her mind and emotions. This made her feel trapped and helpless, as if she had no control over her own thoughts and feelings. Despite her efforts to fight it, her depression seemed to be getting stronger and more overwhelming, making her feel like she was losing herself to the darkness. To seek help for her worsening depression, Sonia decided to visit a psychiatric clinic. During her visit, she opened up about her struggles that started 5 years ago when her husband left her and their young children without any warning. This sudden abandonment left Sonia feeling hurt, betrayed, and overwhelmed with the responsibility of raising her children alone. As time went on, the weight of this difficult situation took a toll on her mental health, leading to the intensification of her depression. By sharing her story with the professionals at the clinic, Sonia hoped to find support and guidance to help her cope with her past trauma and manage her depression in a healthy way. Sonia now barely managed to earn a living since she couldn't even read, although she hid that fact from her children. In order to provide her with more intensive treatment, a psychiatrist suggested that Sonia stay at the clinic for a few weeks. Sonia understood the importance of getting the help she needed to overcome her depression, but she was also concerned about leaving her children behind. To ease their worries, she explained to her sons that she would be staying in the hospital for a short while and instructed them to focus on learning the multiplication table while she was away. A few days after Sonia checked into the clinic, she received a letter from her son Ben. The letter was riddled with mistakes, but it was clear that he was writing to her because he was feeling bored and missed her. In the letter, Ben promised to study harder, which made Sonia both happy and sad. On one hand, she was proud of her son for recognizing the importance of education and taking responsibility for his own learning. On the other hand, reading his letter while she was in the hospital made her feel emotional and longing to be with her children. After Sonia was discharged from the hospital, Ben came home excitedly to share some good news with her. He had received a good grade on a test that he had been studying hard for, and he couldn't wait to show his mother. Sonia was overjoyed to see her son's hard work paying off and hugged him tightly. She was proud of Ben for pushing himself to improve his grades and felt grateful to have such a supportive and dedicated son. Ben's success at school was a sign of hope for Sonia, reminding her that progress and happiness were possible even in the face of difficult circumstances. Sonia felt a renewed sense of purpose in life. She decided to take action and find a job. She worked as a housekeeper for a man who had a passion for reading and a vast collection of books in his home library. Upon returning home from her new job, Sonia noticed that her children were watching TV as usual. However, instead of letting them continue with their routine, Sonia felt frustrated and decided to make a change. She turned off the TV and announced that from that day forward, her sons would only be allowed to watch 2 TV shows a week after they had completed all of their homework. Sonia recognized the importance of setting boundaries and encouraging her children to prioritize their education and responsibilities, and hoped that this new rule would help them develop healthier habits and interests. Sonia also made a new rule that her sons had to read 2 books each and give her a summary of what they learned from the books. Although her sons were not thrilled about these new rules, they followed them anyway and went to the library to get their first books. To their surprise, they found that reading could actually be enjoyable and started to prefer watching quiz shows on TV instead of mindless entertainment. The boys' new interest in reading had a positive impact on their academic performance. One day during a lesson, the teacher showed the students a black stone and asked if anyone knew what it was. To the surprise of the class, only Ben was able to correctly identify it as obsidian and even went on to explain its origin. The teacher was impressed by Ben's knowledge and curiosity. The teacher was so impressed with Ben's knowledge and newfound passion for learning that he decided to speak to him privately after class. The teacher was confident that Ben had unlocked a new world of knowledge and that this would help him to reach his full potential in life. In the following weeks, Ben's dedication to reading and learning began to pay off. He became the best student in the school when it came to pronouncing and spelling complex and lengthy words, much to the surprise of his teacher. The principal personally awarded Ben with his diploma, and his mother and brother were extremely proud of him. Everything seemed perfect until one of the teachers ruined the moment. While on stage, she mentioned that when Ben first came to the school, he had struggled academically and received poor grades. The teacher also mentioned that Ben was a black student who was raised by a single mother. This comment from the teacher was not necessary and took away from Ben's accomplishment. It seemed to imply that his success was unexpected because of his background, rather than acknowledging the hard work and dedication that Ben had put into improving himself. Ben's grades are really good. Other kids are quite lazy sometimes. If they worked harder, they would also be getting much better grades, the teacher said. The teacher's comments about Ben's background and previous struggles were not only unnecessary but also unfair. They implied that Ben's success was solely due to his race and family situation rather than his hard work and dedication. The teacher's statement that Ben was the best in school because the other students were lazy and didn't want to work hard took away from Ben's achievement. This ruined the moment for Ben and his mother Sonia, who had worked hard to help her son succeed. It was a disappointing and frustrating end to an otherwise joyful occasion. Time passed and Sonia finally saved up enough money to buy a nice house for her family. Ben and Curtis changed schools to one where there were many black children. Ben was teased by some of the other students, but he responded in their language and made a new friend named Joe who liked cool clothes. Ben wished he had stylish clothes like Joe's and asked his mom to buy him some. However, Sonia was struggling to make ends meet after the move and couldn't afford it. Despite the financial difficulties, Sonia decided to buy her son some expensive pants with the little money she had saved for emergencies. However, when Ben saw the pants, he was not happy and refused to wear them. He demanded that his mother buy him clothes like the other kids at school. Sonia tried to explain that they couldn't afford to buy him anything else, but Ben didn't want to listen. They argued back and forth and things got heated. Suddenly, Ben lost control of his temper and picked up a hammer, threatening his own mother. Sonia was shocked and terrified. She couldn't believe that her own son would turn on her like this. She knew that something had to change, but she didn't know how to fix things. Curtis, Ben's brother, had to intervene and calm Ben down after the argument with their mother. However, a few days later, Ben got into another altercation, this time with his friend Joe. Ben bought a knife from some local gangsters, and during the argument with Joe, he lost his temper and attacked Joe with the knife. Fortunately, the blade hit Joe's belt buckle and broke, saving Joe's life. After this close call, Ben realized that he needed to change his ways. He knew that he had come dangerously close to killing someone, and it scared him. He ran home and went straight to his bedroom, where he grabbed his Bible and prayed for help. He begged God to help him control his temper and become a better person. After finishing high school, Ben went to Yale University because he did really well in school. He got a scholarship from the government to help pay for his studies. While at Yale, he met a girl named Candy who was also a student there. They started dating after getting to know each other. Ben had trouble keeping up with the work at such a fancy university, and he told Candy about it. She suggested that he try studying on his own. Ben followed her advice and spent a lot of time reading and studying. It turned out that he was really good at it and became one of the top students in his class. Once during a class, the teacher was talking about the brain, which is a really amazing part of the human body. Ben was listening and suddenly had a realization that he wanted to become a neurosurgeon. He felt inspired and excited by the idea of working with such a fascinating organ and helping people who might have problems with it. From that moment on, he knew what he wanted to do with his life and started taking steps to achieve his goal. After some time had passed, Ben made his way to Johns Hopkins in 1976. This was a really well-known place in America that specialized in neurosurgery. Lots of people wanted to do an internship here, but only 2 out of every 100 applicants were chosen. Despite the competition, Ben declared that he really wanted to practice here. He talked about how amazing the brain was and how it was like a miracle, which was why he wanted to study neurosurgery. When he also mentioned that he loved classical music, the admission committee was finally convinced to let him in. When Ben first started at the department, the head physician didn't think much of him and told him to do whatever he was told without asking questions. A patient was rushed to the hospital with a serious head injury from being hit with a bat. All the other doctors were at a conference, leaving Ben to make a tough decision. He decided to perform an emergency operation to save the patient's life, even though it was risky and could have had negative consequences for his career. Despite the pressure and stress, Ben stayed focused and used all his knowledge and skill to save the patient's life. Luckily, the operation performed by Ben was a success and the patient's life was saved. When the head doctor returned and learned about what had happened, he called Ben to his office and thanked him for making the right decision in the critical situation. The head doctor recognized Ben's talent and bravery and realized that he had underestimated him before. From that day on, Ben was given more responsibility and trust within the department, and his career as a neurosurgeon began to flourish. Ben became the head of the pediatric neurosurgery department at Johns Hopkins Hospital 10 years later. One day, a married couple brought their daughter to the hospital because she had seizures 100 times a day and couldn't get out of bed. Lots of doctors had tried to help her, but none of them had succeeded. After examining the patient, Ben realized that the only way to save her was to remove one of the hemispheres of her brain. He explained to the girl's parents that he had never done this type of surgery before, but it was their only hope. If it worked, the girl's brain would be able to heal quickly. Although there was a big risk that the girl might lose the ability to move or talk on one side of her body, her parents agreed to go ahead with the surgery. A few days later, Ben performed a very complex operation that lasted several hours. Everyone waited anxiously for the girl to wake up and see how she was doing. When she finally opened her eyes, she was able to speak and called out to her parents, bringing tears of happiness to everyone's eyes. It was a very emotional moment, and everyone was relieved that the operation had been a success. The girl still had a lot of work to do to recover, but her chances of living a normal life had greatly improved thanks to Ben's skill and expertise. The successful operation attracted the attention of numerous reporters who came to the hospital to interview the neurosurgeon who created a real miracle. The technique for removing one of the hemispheres of the brain for frequent convulsions became generally accepted, and Ben performed hundreds of such operations after that. Ben was happily married to his wife Candy, and soon the couple was expecting twins. Unfortunately, one dark day, Candy miscarried and both babies died, and Ben could do nothing to help them. He sat by his wife's bed for hours until they came to their senses. Candy thanked her husband for his support and asked him to return to their workplace as dozens of children were waiting for operations and only the experienced Ben could save them. The doctor returned to work, and at home, he quietly sobbed his loss. Mom supported Ben and said that she was very proud of her son because thanks to his efforts, many families had finally found happiness. In 1987, Ben arrived in Western Germany, where he faced the most difficult case of his career, which was not taken by any neurosurgeon in the world. Twins with their heads joined at the back of their heads would forever remain bedridden unless they were separated. However, both twins had never survived such operations. The main danger during the operation was bleeding, due to which one of the babies would surely die. For 4 months, Ben thought about how to save both twins until he finally found a solution. Parents brought the twins to the Johns Hopkins Hospital, and after many hours of preparation, 50 doctors and nurses gathered in the operating room. Everyone knew exactly what and when to do their job, since the slightest mistake could lead to tragedy. Finally, at 7 in the morning, the surgeons began the operation. First of all, the hearts of the twins were stopped so that they didn't bleed to death. Then the babies were separated from each other and their blood vessels were reshaped. Ben had only 1 hour while the brain was still performing its functions, but the doctor was successfully coping with the most difficult task. The operation lasted 22 hours, after which a tired Ben came out to the parents of the twins and happily said that everything went well. The twins returned to Germany with their parents and live happily there to this day. Ben Carson had since successfully performed 5 such incredible surgeries. Together with his wife Candy, they established a fund for the best students, thanks to which thousands of children's lives were saved.